if it really was God, that would be just as plausible. But that one just doesn't seem to happen. Because you can always claim, well, the bread just got burnt that way. But that big face, really just no other way. Now, God can hide in between the bread and the frying pan where we can't see him. And there a miracle can occur. That's the way God works. God can hide inside your body where you can't see what's happening, and then he can cure you of a disease. Now, of course, one problem that comes with this little method is that as we learn more, God's power will become more limited. I mean, there will come a time where we have so much technology and our medical understanding is so great that we will be able to say with absolute certainty, we'll be able to look at what's going on inside someone's body. And then, from that perspective, God healing them would look just as miraculous as him growing back someone's arm. But remember, God only does things that could have another explanation. Maybe we would understand so much about the random images that bread generates that we would be able to know what to expect when we fry a piece of it. People probably believe that if you prayed about it, God could affect the roll of a die. He could help you get like a 6 if you really needed to. If your life depended on it, because had been captured by some primitive tribe, and this is how they had their trials. But nobody believes that God could help you roll a 7. Well, that's not on the die. I mean, God couldn't do that. That doesn't have another explanation. But if we understood more about the physiology of what happens when you toss a die, what we might notice is that, in fact, it's just falling as a function of how it's thrown. And the occurrence of or of not a 6 would not be random. We would know what was going to happen. And then getting a 6 when you are supposed to get a 2 because of the way that it fell would be as absurd as getting a 7. Now, more progressive believers may not claim that God does silly shit like appearing on a door or something, but they believe that God communicates to them as that little voice in their head, or that they'll open up their Bible and I opened it up to a certain page. It was God speaking to me in his way. His way, the way that could have just been the way that I opened it up. That's God's way. Or it could just be one of those little voices that you hear. But never the loud, booming voice from the clouds, which couldn't have been anything but God. You see that wouldn't have another explanation. But as we learn more about what's going on in your mind, we'll be able to understand that little voice that sounds like God, and we'll be able to understand why you seem to think that God was telling you something. And then God won't really be able to do that anymore because it would look just as miraculous as the big booming voice from the clouds. I mean, God has already receded some. I mean, look, he used to be like flooding the world and turning people into pillars of salt, and parting the Red Sea, and back before video cameras were around, back before there was reliable ways of keeping records. But then, when all you really had was like word of mouth, because then there was another explanation when somebody told you God done something really, really big. They just made it up. And he still does that some today. Like, there's all these people like fucking claiming they seen a ghost, right? And then maybe that's not really God, but it's always just the one person's testimony. And it's funny, it's how often it's at night when like it could have been just a dream. Never when I'm like fully aware of myself and my surroundings. So, but then once we started to get, ways of like being able to actually verify that shit actually happened, well, God, he really can't do those things so much anymore. Now, an interesting question is, why is God like this? Well, so of course, like I said, one answer is that there really is no God, or there is one, he's just not doing shit. But of course, well, we know that's not true. It could never be that. No, that couldn't be it. The answer is he wants you to have faith. I mean, if he makes it easy, if he just makes it, something that's really obvious, well, it won't take anything to believe that. It was like this story of like, one of these stupid ass chain emails. There was an atheist college professor who would always tell his students there was no God, and they all just believed him. And one year, and a student stood up and said, "Well, I'm a Christian, Mr. Professor, and I believe in God." The professor's like, "You're such an idiot." I'm sure this is actually how it went down. And the professor picked up a piece of chalk and said, "God could stop this piece of chalk from falling to the ground," or something. And like he dropped it, this is according to the story, and like it rolled down his sleeve or something, something about the physiology of the way it fell appeared to be very far out of what you would have expected. And the professor just was shocked, and he ran out of the room and in embarrassment. Well, that was God, that's for sure, right? I mean, God couldn't have just like appeared in a 50-foot tall being in front of the professor and said, "No, actually, I do exist, so fuck you." Now, he couldn't be that way, or it couldn't have been any of the countless things that could have happened to where there's no way you could debate it. It had to be that, because that required people to have faith, to believe that couldn't have just happened. That's assuming that the story is even true, which is probably not, but that requires you to take some, to make yourself believe that really was God behind that strange-looking natural phenomenon. It's not quite clear why this is so important to God, but it seems to be. It's also not clear what God wants you to do about the fact that this leaves you completely unable to discern anything. If it's a valid process in reasoning to have faith that God can cure you, then it's valid to believe that Zeus can cure you. So God either wants you to be really good at guessing, number one. That's one possibility. So it's like, here's a grilled cheese, and God acted to put someone's face on it. So you need to have faith that was God. Now, unfortunately, a frying pan could randomly generate that image. So if that happens, you'll need to not believe that that one was God. You'll need to be skeptical about that one. But when it actually is God, you'll need to believe. So you're going to have to be really good at guessing. That's one way, right? Somebody comes up and tells you, God spoke to me. You have to believe him if he actually did. But if he didn't, then they're just crazy. So that's one way God could want you to be, just a really good guesser. Or God basically really wants you to believe in all the supernatural stuff that he does. And it's okay if you pretty much just believe everything that appears to be supernatural just in case. Like God spoke to me and told me this. Oh, if you say he did, then he totally did. I mean, because he might have. So I gotta go along with it. That kind of looks like God's face there. So I'm totally believing that God generated that image. That one just didn't happen randomly, or it couldn't be that I'm like data searching and my mind's just hardwired to see faces or anything like that. This person was sick and then got better. Well, they were definitely sick. It couldn't have been just a misdiagnosis. That was totally God. Everything, it's all God. Okay. But then, of course, like I said, this process, you'd be able to say by the same reasoning, oh, it's all Zeus, it's all Apollo, it's all Russell's fucking teapot. The little Puff the Magic Dragon, he's the one doing all this stuff too. I can believe in any claim about anything supernatural that anyone comes up with because that way, just to make sure that I get any of them that actually did happen. So anyway, I'm not real sure how God wants us to handle the fact that this method of his intervention, if we're to believe in it, leaves us vulnerable to believe lots and lots of stupid shit. So we either need to be a really good guesser, if that's what he wants, or we just need to believe any claim, no matter how silly. So I haven't figured that one out yet.